Good evening, folks. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay, and we're just doing a sound check on our end. I know there's some storms up and down the East Coast right now, and so I just want to make sure, like I said, we're just checking connections. So we'll get started here in just a moment. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. My name is Mike Kinnett. Tonight, we're probably going to take about maybe an hour and 15 minutes to get through this whole program. I do have opportunities for questions. If you have questions as we go, there's a way you can kind of raise your hand. Sometimes the questions get a little too involved, to take a little bit too much time, or even for that matter, a little too personal. Even though I love to talk and I can talk for hours, I'm pretty sure none of us want to sit here for 2 or 3 hours as I answer questions like that. So we'll provide you some opportunities to just schedule a 10 or 15-minute conversation, address any questions that may come up as we get through this, as we get through the workshop. Again, as I said, my name is Mike Kinnett. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Obviously, we're going to cover a lot of information. We're going to go through a lot of stuff in a very short time. It's a condensed time frame that we're working with here. Please do not walk away with anything that you hear me talk about tonight and assume that there's not more information that you need to use in order to make an informed decision. I'm giving you the basic information that you need so that you can contemplate the what ifs, but do not assume that everything is 100% complete in its sentence. So when I talk about tax implications, you need to understand all the aspects of the tax implications. When we talk about how to claim Social Security, you need to know all the aspects of how to claim it. And I can't go through all the minutiae and all the little details in the time we have here. So just please understand that while we're trying to give you some useful information to put you on the right track, you really do need to sit down with somebody afterwards before you make a decision on anything to make sure you have all the information you need. So I hope that makes sense. Just a little bit about me. I call it my wall of shame. I put this up here so that you do know that I actually have a little bit of background and a little bit of credibility in what I'm doing. I'm being told I am freezing, so hopefully that is somebody else's problem and not my problem. But if in fact you see me freezing, feel free to tell me that you can. If you see that I'm freezing, please let me know and we'll figure out if we need to do something different from there. But so my wall of shame, I have a couple bestsellers. I just published a third bestseller, The Death and Taxes. That just came out about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. We did make #1 on Amazon. I've been on television, radio. We're on probably 3 or 4 different stations between Florida and Maryland and Michigan. We do have offices all up and down the East Coast. I have been pretty much in every journal, every publication there is in some form or fashion. I've appeared on Fox News. I've been on ABC, CBS, NBC. I teach continuing education, adult education courses at UMUC, Strayer University, and over at Loyola. So again, just to let you know that I do have some understanding and some background. I happen to be a financial planner. I am an attorney, licensed in the state of Maryland, attorney in the state of Maryland. I also have a master's degree in tax, and at the okay, so I just got notice that I am not frozen, so it's just one person. So thank you very much for letting me know. I do have a master's degree in tax. And what that means, at the risk of offending any CPAs out there, that when the CPA gets stuck, they call people like us. As a firm, we probably do about 1,500 tax returns a year. We have about $500 million all in the firm, maybe a little bit more, depending on which day of the week it is and what the market's doing in a particular day. So I'm a very large mom and pop. I have a very extensive background. I've been teaching classes for years. So just kind of let you know that I really do have an understanding of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And the basic conversation is going to be about Social Security, but we're going to weave in some other important issues because Social Security is just one part of an overall plan that you need to take into account. Social Security started back in the early 30s. Roosevelt came up with this idea. It was designed to take care of the working poor initially. A couple things were supposed to happen. You were supposed to work for X amount of years, and then when you're ready to collect Social Security, you were supposed to you were supposed to do something specifically, and for most of us you were supposed to have the common courtesy to pass away. You weren't supposed to collect Social Security. And nowadays, obviously when we're collecting Social Security, some of us are taking it at 60 as a widow, or maybe 62, and we're collecting for 25 and 30 years, and the life expectancy just wasn't as long back then. So it's has changed a little bit in what it's looking like now. Back in the 30s when this first came about, life expectancy was about 61 years old, and you had to be 65 to claim it. So clearly, there's a disconnect in what's going on, and just kind of a question I have here for you. Think about it from this perspective. I'm going to give you a minute. Just give me some feedback. What do we think? What's the percentage chance that at least one person, one of the spouses, if you're married, what's the chance of one of you making it to at least age 85? What do we think? And just click on there and tell me what you think, so I know that it works. So at least one person. Maybe we have democracy at work. Look at that. There we go. Looking good. Got almost everybody participating. Thank you very much. Yeah, and actually, the answer is if you're married, when you start collecting Social Security at 62, there's more than a 70% chance that at least one of you makes it to 85, and there's actually a 50% chance that both of you make it to age 90, and there's a 25% chance that one of you makes it to 92. So we are living longer, and so as we're making these decisions about when and how to collect Social Security, as we're making these decisions on how Social Security is going to interact with our pensions if we're lucky enough to have it, and perhaps our investments, as we're trying to figure out how to weave that income stream together, we need to keep that in mind, that we're living a heck of a lot longer than we used to. So just in the back of your mind, don't think that I have to have this money lasting me for 10 or 15 years. Think that you need to plan till probably age 95, and if you're working with an advisor of some sort, or if you're putting together your own plan, you really should create your income stream based upon the fact that you are going to make it to 95. So just in the back of your mind, keep that there. One of the big questions we get when people come into the office is, what about Social Security? Is it actually going to live long enough? Is it going to be there long enough for me to collect it? And the reality is there's all sorts of mixed information out there. I mean, obviously, Congress has told us over and over again that it's going to be there. And for what it's worth, people over 50, we typically vote, and we vote pretty strong. And Congress doesn't want to upset us or disappoint us. So I don't think Social Security is going to go away. What I do worry about is that as we dip into the Social Security strong box, the lock box that was created, so to speak, as we dip into that, and as we have less and less people working, and as we have things like we had in this last quarter where employers had the option to opt out, so to speak, employees could not pay their Social Security in the hopes that come January, things would be better, and either they paid it back or Congress passed a rule that said you didn't actually have to pay for that last quarter. As we do more and more things like that, I do worry that we really will see a reduction in Social Security at some point. And if you've looked at your Social Security statement in the last several years, there's a statement in there that actually tells you that by the time we get to somewhere around 2032, 2034, right in that time frame, we're expecting somewhere around 75 cents on the dollar. So clearly, Social Security is an issue. Now, Social Security is an easy fix. They can fix that fairly easily if Congress would just have the gumption. Obviously, we're living longer. Maybe they could just make it 65, 70, and 75 instead of 62, and we're going to say 67 and 70 as our retirement ages. So there are options for Social Security to be repaired and fixed. But the reality is that Social Security is under some stress. I'm not so worried about it for those of us that are over 50. I worry about it more for the people that are under 50. I think they're going to have more problems than we will have. I think Congress will step up and the government will make sure that we're taken care of. Again, part of it's just the constituency and the fact that we vote. Sorry about that. Another issue that we do have to take into consideration is that when Social Security was first founded and created, there were 41 people working per retiree. Today, we have 2.9 people working per retiree. So that clearly is another contributing factor to the fact that we do not have enough people working, and we don't have enough money coming in to actually cover the new costs, right? So there's not enough people working to continue to fund to pay us. That's why the trust fund, so to speak, is shrinking slowly but surely over the years, and that'll continue to do so. And again, if you're concerned about that, if that's one of those things that you have worries about, well, then you need to have a plan that accounts for the fact that perhaps you're only going to get 75 cents on the dollar. Maybe if you're worried about the fact that if you look back through history over the last 3 or 4 presidencies, George Bush II put about $7 trillion on the deficit. Obama put about $8.5 trillion on the deficit. Trump has put about $5 trillion on the deficit. And so whichever way you cut it, I don't care if you lean left or you lean right, or you're kind of in the middle. At the end of the day, the federal government and our elected leaders have never been a really good steward of our money. When the Democrats are in control, they spend like drunken sailors on the things they think are important, and the Republicans complain about it. And then when the Republicans are in control, they spend like drunken sailors on the things they think are important, and the Democrats complain about it. But either way, they're spending way more of our money. So if you have concerns that, in fact, that is going to have a profound impact on your retirement, and you think you're going to have a reduction in Social Security, or if you're even collecting Social Security now and you worry about it being tapped into, being reduced in the future years, well, then you need to sit down and figure out, if they do that to me, what am I going to do? Where's that source of revenue going to come from? How am I going to change my investments? How am I going to change my income streams to accommodate that? And that's certainly something that is worth having a conversation about. So the idea of Social Security, one of the things that people like about Social Security is the fact that we know that no matter what happens, it's going to be there. Each and every month, we're going to get that paycheck. Now, notwithstanding the fact that what happens if they drop it 25%, at the end of the day, we know that we're going to get that check every single month. And to some extent, it's that reliability. And for those of you that have actually entered into retirement, many of us, it's a very difficult process, emotional process, to give up that steady paycheck in exchange for, well, maybe Social Security, if we're lucky enough to have a pension, and maybe to have some sort of income stream coming in from our investments. It's a very scary prospect, because you no longer have that in your mind's eye, that guaranteed paycheck every month. Well, Social Security, to some extent, takes care of that. Social Security, in theory, should make up about a third of your income needs. So whatever your paycheck was, Social Security should be roughly about a third of it. And with that 1/3 of income, it's nice to know there's some sort of comfort in there, knowing that no matter what happens, we're going to get that money in our lives every single month until the day we pass away. And if we're married, our spouse can continue to get either ours or in my case, my wife's can get mine or hers, whichever is greater. So there's some comfort level knowing that that's going to be there no matter what. And the other part about it is that we do know it's an index for inflation. So as you're doing your own financial plans or sitting down with us or somebody else, you need to make sure that you are accounting for the fact that there's an inflationary pressure in life, and Social Security does have it. And we know you will never run out of money. And I think the number one worry that most people have is, people worry that they're going to run out of money before they run out of time. The nice part about Social Security is we know it's going to be there regardless. How do we maximize the benefits of that? A couple things we need to think about when we're thinking about how to get the most money out of Social Security. First and foremost, if you've ever been to the Social Security website, they tell you it's straightforward. You just fill out a couple buttons and you fill out a couple lines, click a couple buttons, and boom, it's there. You're supposed to apply for Social Security 3 months before you want to start collecting it, and up to 3 months after you collect it. And by the way, if you're at or near 65, you need to apply for Medicare 3 months before, up to basically, for our conversation, like 3 months after. you need to apply for Medicare. Even if you're going to continue to work, you need to apply for Medicare. And the reason why you need to apply for Medicare right around 65 is that failure to do so can result in penalties in the future when you do go get Social Security. So if you're still working and you don't need Medicare, you apply, they're going to give you Part A regardless. You don't need to pick up Part B, but you need to tell them that you're working and that's why you're not going to collect it. The other part about this is that if you're divorced and you are going to get healthcare benefits from your spouse until your spouse retires, or you're going to get healthcare benefits from your spouse, and you even catch some benefits after your divorced spouse retires, you still need to apply for Social Security and tell them that you don't need it because you're collecting on your ex-spouse, that you're collecting on their Medicare. Because if you don't do that, when they retire and they're forced to go get Part B, you're going to get penalized on your Part B. So just keep that in mind as you're putting together the plan, as you're thinking about when do I apply for Social Security. You also need to think about when should I be applying for Medicare. And it's not as easy as a process as you think it is. At one point, there were 567 different iterations, different calculations, different options you had on how and when to take Social Security. I showed you a slide a little bit earlier. When Ronald Reagan became president and he realized that the supply side economics resulted in a little less money coming into the Treasury, he really was a deficit hawk, and he didn't like the fact that he was running up these big deficits. So he decided to tax a portion of Social Security, and he made up to 50% taxable. And then when Clinton became president a little while later, he decided that, well, if a Republican can tax 50%, certainly a Democrat can tax 35%. So now up to 85% of Social Security is taxable. I bring that up from the perspective of the different iterations of when we can collect Social Security. When Reagan started taxing 50% of it, they took away one of the biggest loopholes we had. And it was great. We used to claim Social Security at 62. We would take all those benefits all the way to age 70. We would bank them, and think about this in the 80s. You could put all that money in the stock market. Everybody was making 20%, 30%, no matter what you invested in. So you bank all that money from 62 all the way up to age 70. At age 70, you would tell them you changed your mind. You'd give them back the principal. You get a tax write-off for giving the principal back. All the earnings and all the gains for all those years was your money. And then you got to start taking your Social Security as if you were age 70, which is a boatload more than it was when you were 62. Well, Ronald Reagan took that away when he passed the 50% tax rule. And then in 2014 and 15, when they were extending out the Bush tax cuts, part of what the Obama and Bush tax cut extension agreement was the elimination of the other part, that whole file and suspend. So we're not going to spend a lot of time. We're not going to spend any more time than this on file and suspend. However, if you are in that category where you could actually still claim file and suspend, or if you have questions about how that might work, what I want you to do here is, if you just take a time, you can schedule a call. You schedule a call with us, take 10 or 15 minutes, and I will talk you through how it works, how it may be applicable to you. Now, keep in mind, for most people, the file and suspend doesn't work. It's not going to work for most of us, but it was one of those really cool things we could do up through most of the Obama administration, and really by about 2017, 2018 is really when it went away 100%. So if you weren't eligible, if you weren't about 64 years old in 2017 and you didn't take certain actions then, it's not going to apply now. But if you did do some things in 2015 and 16 to take advantage of it, you can still take advantage of it. Give us a call. Make sure you're on track with that. So there's a button. Click that little button, stick up a time, and we schedule 15-minute conference calls just to figure out what it is we can do for you and help you out and answer any questions you may have. So if you want to, you can click that button there. So remember I said there was 567 iterations on how to collect it. This is the math calculation on how to figure out how much you actually get, right? So how much money do I get? We know it's based on some criteria. That's the math problem. So when you're trying to figure out, should I take it at 62? Should I take it at 67? Should I take it at 70? There's the math problem you need to do. And the interesting thing is as much as you would like to call Social Security up and say, help me, they can only help you so much. They can tell you how much each of those numbers may be when you ask them specific questions, but they really can't do the calculations for you to figure out the best time for you to collect it. So keep that in mind. If you want us to do a calculation on what's the best time, we will do that for you. But this is kind of what people do. They kind of think about it. Well, if I take it at 62, if I live long enough, I'll make more money, and I won't be taken out of my investments. But basically, the difference can be as much as $250,000 to $300,000 difference over your lifetime. And think about that. Taking it at 62 can result in you losing about $250,000 of money over your lifetime if you take it at 62 instead of waiting to 70. So again, $250,000, that is not chump change. Think about the fact that, are you willing to just give away $250,000 in your investment accounts because you don't think you're going to need it at all? That's exactly what happens if you don't take Social Security correctly. So do think about that. Think about the iterations of, should I take it at 62, 67, 70? What about in between? Some of the factors that come into play are, am I going to keep working? Am I going to work part-time? If I don't take the money now and I want to retire at 62, where's that extra money going to come from, right? So do I deplete some of my assets because I know Social Security grows if I wait? Well, that's a possibility. How old am I going to live to, right? I mean, my side of the family, I happen to be Hispanic. I know I don't look it, but I happen to be Hispanic. And nobody in my family has ever made it to be 75 years old. My wife, on the other hand, she's Norwegian, and my mother-in-law, who's living with us during the time of Corona at 88 years old, I can tell you right now, Norwegians live forever. We went to visit one of her aunts last summer in Norway, 102 years old, and if you got up from the table to help her serve dinner, she would beat you with her cane. So Norwegians live a long time. So for us, I've made the decision that I'm going to wait to age 70 to start taking mine. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's important for my wife and myself. But I'm going to wait to age 70 to take mine so that when I pass away, presumably first, she will be able to step up into mine. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So one of the questions we get all the time is, can I still work, right? And I guess that's kind of a question I have for you guys. What do we think? Can we still work when you're taking Social Security? Are you allowed to do that? So give me a response here. What do we think? Can we do it or no? About halfway there. Democracy working hard for us. Democracy working hard for us. All right. So the question is can we take it or not? And somebody else clicked on it. Kind of depends on your age, and the answer is kind of, yeah, a little bit of all that stuff. The fact is that I kind of talked about this. The fact is that yes, you can collect Social Security while you're working. If you're below your full retirement age, so if you start collecting Social Security as a widow at age 60, or you start collecting Social Security at 62, and you're working, you can't make more than about $1,500 a month. And we'll go through the numbers a little bit more. You can't make more than about $1,500 a month. The year you turn your full retirement age, and for most of us, it's somewhere between 66 and 67. In the year you turn 66 or 67, you can make about $48,000 up to the point when you apply. So if you make up to $48,000 and then you apply for Social Security because you turned 67, that's fine. That doesn't cause a problem. But if you violate that rule, if at 62 you're making $3,000 a month, you're going to be paying back for every $2 you make. You have to pay $1 back, so you lose 50% of your Social Security. In the year you retire, if you go over that 48,000, for every $3 you got to pay $1 back. So keep in mind, as you're doing your planning and you're thinking about retiring, you need to take that into consideration. So one of the questions also is, how much am I going to get? There's a calculation. We look at the top 35 earning years. and we kind of average it out. We see what the income is. Social Security tells it what it is. We can do some calculations for you ourselves. If we take it early at 62, basically every year you delay taking it, on average, it's going to grow by almost 8%. In the early years, it grows less, but by the time you get to be 66, 67, it starts growing at 8% every year. So think about this from the perspective of, we've always heard that you need, I don't know, $1 million to retire. There's some number you need in your mind's eye to retire. And if your investments can grow at 8%, that's a pretty strong return. Heck, if your investments can grow by 6 or 7%, that's still not a bad return in general. So keep in mind that every year you delay taking Social Security, you make a little bit more money, which is a very good thing, right? Now, the flip side to this is that if you take it at 62 and you live past 74, you took it too early. If you take it at 70 and you pass away before age 81, you waited too long. So if you take it at 62 and you live to be 80 years old, you didn't collect as much money as you could. That's that I left $250,000 on the table scenario. The flip side to it is if you take it at 70 and you die at 75, again, I left $250,000 on the table because all those years I could have been collecting, I didn't take my money. So it is not as simple as just black and white. I'm going to retire when I'm 63, so I'll start taking it when I turn 63. You really need to, as you're creating your plan, as you're developing what retirement's going to look like, as you're developing what your budget's going to be, as you're looking at what my income streams are going to be, where my income is going to come into, you really do need to think about the fact that how old do I think I'm going to be? And I get it. It's a guessing game. There's not a black and white number. It's not like, well, no, I'm going to die when I'm 76 years old in 3 months. I get it. But your family history, your own personal health, you have certain health issues going on. Your family has health issues. You know what your lifestyle's been like. You can make kind of some projections. Same thing as your income needs. You know where your money is going to come from during retirement. And you have to balance those things. Do I deplete my assets? Am I going to live? How long am I going to live? And it's a balancing act. And one of the things that we'll do for you, if you want us to, we can calculate those numbers for you. We can calculate the numbers. Oh, I apologize. We can calculate the numbers for you. And we will calculate them from the perspective of if you take it at 62, 63, 64, we can make those calculations and just change the age that you want them for, so you know exactly how much you're going to be leaving on the table, and we can adjust your death and the income that produces to kind of fit that sweet spot for where you want it to be. And in addition to that, we can talk about the tax implications, because the tax implications are huge. So if that's something you want us to address for you, just click the button and schedule a time, and we'll get that taken care of. Talked a little bit about this. There are some options when we're doing spousals, when there's a husband and wife involved. First of all, if you're married and you're divorced, you can claim on your spouse, right? So think about this. If you're married for 10 years and your spouse is collecting, you can collect half of your spouse's and then let yours continue to grow. If you're a widow, you can take your spouse's benefits as a widow at age 60, and you can let yours continue to grow. Now, there's not a whole lot of options with that, but that's one of the exceptions to the rule. Now, for most of us, what's going to happen is, for me, I'm going to wait to age 70, because that means I'm going to get that much more money for me when I'm alive. Now, when I pass away, my wife gets the option of the greater of mine or the greater of hers. She's going to lose one of them, so she'll either get mine or hers, whatever's higher. Now, I happen to be the primary breadwinner in our family for all the years. I guess, gosh, we're coming up to 40 years here in a month or so. But I've been the primary breadwinner. And so my Social Security is going to be higher than hers, larger than hers. But the flip side to it is, what we're going to do is we're going to turn on her Social Security when she turns 62. So we'll collect her Social Security at 62 all the way up until 70, and then when I turn 70, I'll turn mine on, and when I turn my Social Security on, all of a sudden she'll get the greater of 100% of hers up to half of mine. So she can get 100% of hers plus more to get 50% of mine. So we'll get a bump when I turn 70. We're going to take hers at 62, and then we'll get a bump when I turn 70. She'll get an increase of about 40% more money when I turn 70. So we're getting a nice little raise when I turn 70. That will go a long way for us. And again, we get that raise. We collect hers all those years for basically that 8 years, because I'm about a year older than she is. We're going to collect hers for about 8 years, and then we'll turn mine on, and she'll get that cost of living, a huge cost of living, right? She'll get a huge raise when I turn 70 and I turn mine on, because she'll be able to step into 50% of mine. And that's what all this stuff says. All right, moving on. This is what I was just talking about. You can get the greater of the two. When I pass away, if I'm getting 2,000 and my wife's getting 1,200, you get 3,200. When I pass away, she gets my 2,000, so she steps into my 2,000, but we lose her 1,200. That's what I was talking about before. I did say that we would do a Social Security calculation for you. We'll figure out the best age to retire. We'll figure out the best way to collect the most money. And if there's two of you, if you're husband and wife, and keep in mind, this applies to same-sex couples too, right? I mean, the rules are the same for same-sex couples as it is for heterosexuals. The rules are uniform at this point. So keep that in mind as you're contemplating the what ifs. It's not just what I can get out of it, it's what we can get out of it together. And you absolutely need to have those calculations done to make sure that you are getting the most money out of it that you can possibly get. Let's see, what do I have here? Let's throw this one out here. Because we'll kind of get into this soon. What do we think the average rate of return of the S&P is? If you go to January 1st of 2000 all the way up to, I don't know, I think I have this calculated out to Monday or Tuesday of this week, Monday of this week. So I have it calculated out to Monday of this week. If you had to guess, what do we think the average rate of return is over that last basically 21-year period of time? Look at that. Democracy is just a mess. So we have a 37% participation rate. Oh, look, moving up there. Come on, don't be shy. Go ahead and give it a guess. All right. So about half of you think between 5 and 8%, and about half of you think more than 8%. All right, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. We'll see what the real numbers happen to be. All right, so the rest of my income, right? I'm going to have a portion of my money come from Social Security. I said about a third of your income should come from Social Security. Where's the rest of our money going to come from? So we talked a little bit about this before. I can still work, and what we call in my practice, we call retirement the 3 bad days syndrome. A lot of people really love what they're doing. And so retirement doesn't mean you're not working. Retirement means you don't have to work. So in my practice, we always try to gauge your retirement based upon if you walked into the office or the shop or the store or wherever it is you work, and 3 days in a row, he tells you or she tells you that you have to clean toilets. The boss says, I have to clean toilets 3 days in a row. You can look at the boss and say, I hope you recognize I'm here because I want to be. I don't need to be. And so if you ask me to clean toilets again, I'm going to quit. So that's our version of 3 bad days syndrome. So keep it in mind that there's nothing wrong with working if you love working. Just you want to be in a position, you want to have a plan so that you can walk away when you're ready to walk away. And can you still work? Well, we already agreed. Yes, you can work. You just can't work and make too much money in the years before you turn your full retirement age. Now, one of the things that you can do, even though, and this is 2019, this year it's 18,000, like 18,200 or something like that. Keep in mind, if you're able to participate in a 401k and you can put 25,000 roughly into your 401k, well, this would let you make what, 45, 42, 43,000. If you're paying for medical through your employer, you might be able to make a little bit more. So this is how much money shows up on your W-2 as taxable income. So keep that in mind. This is taxable income on your W-2, or taxable income because you're self-employed. You can make more money, but if there's ways for you to stash that money aside into HSAs and flexible spending accounts and healthcare accounts and 401ks and all that type of stuff, you might be able to make more. And certainly you want to pay attention to that. If you are going to work before you reach that full retirement age, you need to pay attention to that to make sure you don't go over whatever the earning limitation happens to be for that year, because this is pretty draconian. I mean, you're basically losing 50% or between a third and 50% of what you would otherwise have earned. So it seems silly and you're not getting those step ups anymore every year in the growth of your of your um, of your Social Security, because remember, it grows by about 8%, 7.5, 8% every year you delay taking it. The out of work, right? I'm done working, so now my income is going to come 100% out of my investments. So the question is what's Warren Buffett's number one rule? What's the number one rule for Warren Buffett? Looking good. Keep coming. Keep coming. All right, we're still at that 50% range. So that's about the amount of people that vote in the United States. That kind of explains some things. There we go. Getting a little bit better. Getting a little bit better. All right. So the answer actually is never run out of money. Buy and hold is from Bogle from Vanguard. He's a big believer in the buy and hold concept, and I'm not a big believer in using mutual funds. We don't use mutual funds for our clients. Sometimes you're stuck using mutual funds and 401ks. I get that part, but for the most part, when you retire, your money shouldn't be in your 401ks. When you leave your employer, your money should probably leave with you. But if you're going to own mutual funds, if for some reason you are working with an advisor that likes mutual funds and that's the direction you go, or if you personally like mutual funds and that's the direction you go, I would strongly encourage you to use Vanguard mutual funds as a mutual fund choice. They're probably some of the best run, most cost effective mutual funds out there for whatever that's worth. Again, I'm not a big proponent of them, but I do think that Vanguard is probably the best group out there if that's the direction you're going to go. Yep, don't run out of money. So when you're thinking about retirement and you have your assets there, a portion of it's going to come from Social Security. If you're lucky enough, you work for the federal government and CSRS or FERS, or if you have a pension from Coca-Cola or one of the baby bells, or and maybe even the government, state or local governments, maybe you have a part of your money coming from pensions. You're still going to have some of your income coming from your investments, the money that you've saved over your lifetime. And just like you have to diversify your stock portfolio, your investment portfolio, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You don't put all the money in the S&P. You diversify. You might have some bonds. You might have some small cap. You might have some large cap. You have all sorts of different investments going on. You need to diversify your retirement income as well. And here's the typical sources of money that you're going to get from retirement. Social Security, everybody's pretty aware of it. Retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roth IRAs, pensions, rental property. Maybe you're going to be inheriting money. You invested in some sort of stock portfolio that provides dividends. Maybe you're using annuities. Maybe you're working part-time during retirement. Again, there's nothing wrong with working part-time. I think a lot of people are nervous about retiring because they're not exactly sure what their day is going to look like. I will tell you this, that about 99.5% of my clients that come in my door, when they sit down and talk with our team, the general consensus is they had no idea how they got anything done while they were working because they are so darn busy in retirement, between the honey-do list, the round-to-it list, the bucket list, volunteering, going out with friends, seeing the family. I mean, obviously, time of COVID, things might be a little bit different or are a little bit different. But generically speaking, when you get to retirement, I can almost assure you that you are going to be very busy in life. But that doesn't mean you don't want to or can't include some sort of part-time work into it if you want to do that. Moving on. So one of the questions we always have is, when you have sat down and you've decided that you're going to actually retire, have you actually created an income stream? Do you know where your income stream is going to come from? Is it 100% safe? Is some of it safe? What portion of it do you know is going to be there no matter what happens? If we have 2000, 2001, 2002, heck, if we have the decade like we had from 2000 to 2010, if you go through that again, is your income secure enough? Are your assets sufficient enough that you can withstand those ups and downs and still have that regular, safe, secure income stream that you want during retirement? In order to have that, you have to have some sort of plan in place. It can't just be, I'm hoping for the best and I think it's going to work. So if you want us to show you how to create that plan, we can do that for you. As a matter of fact, if you just want, if you are the type of investor that likes to do things yourself, that you come to webinars and seminars like this to learn, and hopefully you're learning things, that it's not just, hopefully you're walking away and you're thinking that you got good use of your time with me. But if you want, if you give us a call, you schedule some time, we'll send you out a couple books that you can use to help give you those guidelines. We'll give you a book that will help organize everything for you, to tell you, here's my assets, here's how much money I have, here's how much risk. So it'll walk you through that whole thing, and you can figure that out all yourself. We'll give you a guidebook on here's the things you need to think about. We'll give you a book on how to think about taxes and the things you need to do to create a more tax efficient lifestyle. I mean, from my perspective, our practice has always focused on tax planning. I don't care how much money you make. At the end of the day, it's how much you get to keep and put in your pocket. And if you're losing 20 to 30% right off the top because of taxes, that's an insane way to have a retirement income. So if you want us to show you how to do that, if you just want the guidebooks, if all you want is the guidebooks, just set up a 10 or 15-minute call, tell Dawn what you want, and she'll get you taken care of. The second thing, Warren Buffett's really big about is don't ever lose money. There's an old joke about, rule number one is don't lose money. Rule number two is always remember rule number one. So if you have a written plan and you run through the iterations, you want to do what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. You want to make sure that when we calculate how much Social Security I'm going to have, how much pension I'm going to have if I'm fortunate enough to have a pension, and the rest of my assets, and then plug in how much income I need, you want to know that you're going to have enough money to live on for the rest of your life. Because, of course, at the end of the day, the number one rule or the number one concern and fear is running out of money. If you're taking money out of the stock market from kind of a traditional rule of thumb, and it is just kind of a rule of thumb, somewhere between 3 and 4% is what you can take out of the stock market if you're under age 65. Maybe 4 to 4.5%, 65 to 70, 75 to 80. You can get a little bit. So the older you can get, a little bit more percentage you can take out. But if you're retiring between 60 and 65, 3.5%, 4% is considered a relatively safe withdrawal stream. And I also want to point out that, let's say you need $40,000 a year income to live on, and you have $1 million. Well, if you follow the 4% rule, all $1 million has to be earmarked for income. You can't use that $1 million for anything else but income, because if you take $100,000 out to give to your kids, or take a vacation, or put a new addition on the house, or do something, well, now you only have $900,000. And 4% of $900,000 is $36,000. It's not 40. And if you need 40, you can't touch the $1 million other than for income purposes. So those are some of the iterations that you have to go through. And what a Monte Carlo simulation does is it takes into account that even though we've said the market average is somewhere between 5 and 8 and 8%, and we'll look at that in a minute, you want to make sure that from a statistical standpoint, you're not going to run out of money. And what Monte Carlo will do is it'll take into account those ebbs and flows of the stock market. It'll take into account the fact that sometimes the stock market goes up and sometimes the stock market goes down. So just keep that in mind. And you want somebody to run that for you. You can find it on sites like, if you're a Fidelity fan, like we do our business through Fidelity and Schwab. You can go to Fidelity and Schwab websites. You can go to Vanguard websites, and they will run Monte Carlo simulations for you. Yeah, you got to sign up for stuff and get their emails, but you can always unsubscribe after the fact. We were talking earlier about what has the market done. If you look at this, This is what the market's done through November 10th. And this is the S&P 500. If you bought the S&P 500, and of course, recognizing that you can't buy the S&P 500, you can buy an index fund that's based upon the S&P 500, but this is the actual S&P 500. If you were able to buy the S&P 500, January 1st of 2000 all the way to November 10th of 2010, you averaged 4.28%. Now, the 4.28% is just like the index, doesn't actually have dividends in it. So the S&P averages probably 2 to 2.5% in dividends. So you're making somewhere between maybe 6.5%, depending on what type of dividends are being paid out over that time period. So when we hear that 8%, I always get a little bit nervous for people, because there have been times when the market has done 8%, and certainly the last 10 years the market has been done 10%. But most people don't have 10-year horizon. Most people need this money over the next 30 years. And when you were 20 and 21 and 22 and 30 and working, you can afford those ups and downs. But once you get to that retirement age, where you hear sometimes they call it the retirement red zone, when you get there, you do not want to take those huge losses. And I pointed this out. I talked about this. Imagine if you retired on January 1st of 2000, especially federal employees. You love retiring on January 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, right? Because it maximizes your pension and such, so to speak. But imagine if you retired on January 1st and you were taking out 4% per year. Well, for 13 years, you made no money in the stock market. 13 years, and you took 4% out over those 13 years. So you're 52% in withdrawals and made no money. Think about that. If you were fortunate enough to retire at 57 or 58 from the federal government, which you can do, think about that impact of having no returns. And you need to have a plan for that. What happens if that is what your retirement looks like? Because we know over time, the markets do go up and down. And we're going to talk a little bit more about bear markets versus bull markets. One of the other things as you're doing your planning that I want you to think about, I love this chart, the actual returns versus average returns. We hear all the time about average returns. Well, imagine year one, you're down 50%, and year two, you're up 50%. Well, if you're taking the average of those two, negative 50 plus 50, the average return is 0. That makes perfect sense. But that's not how much money we actually made. We didn't break even. If you have $100,000 and you're 50% down the first year, you have $50,000. And when that $50,000 comes back, 50%, you made 25. They tell you that the average rate of return is 0, and yet I lost money. And so as you're looking through those prospectuses, and as you're trying to decide how to allocate my money, and you're trying to decide, do I want to make sure I never run out of money? This is one of the things I want you to focus on. And if you have a written plan that says, look, here's how I'm going to allocate my income to allocate my assets to create my income, and here's my backup plan if the stock market tanks. I mean, if you have this as your life, this downward spiral, and you can't see me pointing at it, but I'm pointing at this first 50% drop. If that's when you're taking money out of the stock market, you need to have a backup plan that says, I don't have to take the money from the stock market, but maybe I have money in a cash reserve account, right? So maybe I have 3 years worth of money just sitting around in cash. So if the market's going down in 1 year, I'm not taking any money out of the stock market in that down year. And if you can do that, you don't necessarily have to experience this actual return loss like we showed you here. On average, the stock market tanks. There's a bear market about every 7 years. It's about 40%. Even though we had a good 20-30% drop this year, it didn't quite hit what the depth of what some of the bear markets have, but it was considered a bear market because we did drop below that 20% value here in like March and April. And they do happen about every 7 years. This one happened to be about 11 years. But keep in mind, if you're 60 years old or 62 years old and thinking about retiring, sometime in the 7 to 8 years later, you're going to get a 30 to 40% drop in the market. And then you get the recoveries. And then 7 or 8 years later, you'll get another drop. And if you're 60, 62 years old, you'll have somewhere between 4 and 5 drops over your lifetime. So again, having that written plan that says, look, we know every 7 to 10 years, there's going to be something bad happens in the stock market. And here's my plan for when those happens. what that will do for you is that will take the stress off. You don't have to worry that when the market is down 30, 40%, you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What is it going to do to me? Because you already have a written plan that says, here is what I'm going to do when that market drops. That's why it's so important to have a written plan. If you want us to run numbers for you, if you want us to show you how you're going to be able to create those income streams and show you how to create them so that they're as safe and secure as you want them to be, if you schedule 15 minutes with Dawn, she can tell you how to do that, and we can get it taken care of for you. Another thing that you need to think about as you're putting together your plans is what happens if you wind up in a nursing home at some point, right? Roughly about 40% of us are going to be in a long-term care facility for a period of time. I know this says 70% of us are going to spend time in needing long-term care, but actually in a nursing home facility where we are being taken care of for a prolonged period of time. Men, it's about 28 months. Women, you're there about 4 years. We have to figure out a way to pay for that. And we know that if you want to stay in a Kmart Blue Light special, you can get away with maybe $6,000 a month, $5,000 a month. If you want to be in a Target or a J.C. Penney's, maybe not J.C. Penney's, because they just came out of bankruptcy, right? So Target, if you want to be in a Target, maybe $8,000 a month. And if you want Nordstrom's lifestyle, you're talking 12 grand a month. So you need to have a plan for that. And contrary to popular belief, well, let me let me ask you this. I might have set myself up for this, but let me ask you this. What do we think? Does Medicare pay for long-term care? So very good. For most part, we got that correct for the most part. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Now, whenever I say that, I always get somebody, when we're doing these live, I always get somebody to raise their hand and says, "Well, that's not true. Medicare will pay for long-term care." And the answer is, okay, yes, Medicare will pay for long-term care for about 100 days, but you have to have gone from your home into a hospital and from a hospital to a long-term care facility. Most of us, when we need long-term care, most of us are going from our homes into a facility. So Medicare does not pay for that. Medicare will pay for about 100 days. There's some rules about what percentage they pay. But if you're in a nursing home for 5 years, Medicare is not paying for that. Medicaid will pay for it if you don't have enough money to pay for yourself, but Medicare generically does not pay for it. So you need to have a solution. Exactly how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? People get upset about, I got to pay for it out of pocket. Well, that's one way to do it. You can pay for it buying long-term care insurance. People don't want to buy long-term care insurance because, well, it's just too expensive. I might never need it. You can pay for long-term care. There's certain types of life insurance policies that you can buy that say, if you pay for the life insurance and you don't use it, I'm just making up, you buy $300,000 worth of death benefit. If you don't ever use, if you die having never gone to a nursing home, the $300,000 will go to your heirs. But if you need long-term care coverage, you can use somewhere maybe 80-90% of that $300,000 death benefit. So let's say you use 270,000 of it. Well, use 270,000 for long-term care. The remaining 30,000 would go to your heirs when you passed away. So life insurance can be a tool. A lot of people we see come in have been sold some sort of annuity of some sort. So one of the things that we look at for people that have annuities, and the VA here is a variable annuity. If you Google the word annuities, the first thing that comes up is Ken Fisher saying he hates annuities and you should too. And he hates variable annuities. He hates variable annuities because traditionally variable annuities are pretty expensive to own. If you have a variable annuity and you set up some time with us, we can, you tell us what you have. We can go figure out exactly how much it's going to cost you to have your variable annuity in place. But frequently we see somewhere between 3.5% on the low side of fees up to maybe 7 or 8% in fees. It can be very, very expensive. So in this situation, an example of how to manipulate, if you have an existing variable annuity, how to manipulate it into something that will take care of long-term care. here we have a woman. She's got 240,000 in a variable annuity. If she passed away, her heirs get 300,000, but there's no income coming off it, and there's no long-term care. And the reason why it's worth 300,000 if she passes away is because this 241 grew to 300,000 and then dropped back down to 241. So that's why it's 241. That's why it's 300,000. Well, you can take that money, you can move that money in what's called a tax-free exchange, and there's a certain type of, and it's a hybrid, right? It's kind of a part annuity, part life insurance, and what you can get is $700,000 worth of death benefits. So if you don't need the money and you never use it, 700,000 goes to your heirs. But if you need to go into a nursing home, you can use the $700,000 to pay for being in a nursing home. Now, while this says Social Security does not pay for long-term care, the income you get from Social Security can be used towards long-term care, but Social Security does not have a plan in place for you to pay for them to pay for long-term care on your behalf, just like Medicare does not pay for long-term care on your behalf. I mentioned earlier that you could use life insurance. Life insurance can be very expensive. So when you're out there looking, these are typical types of life insurance that you can buy. A term life insurance policy, most of us buy that when we're younger and we're trying to protect our family. We buy it for 10, 20 years. If I die, I want to be able to cover the mortgage, that type of thing. The other three are called cash value life insurance policies. A universal life policy says, I buy it and the interest rate fluctuates. And if you were approached by some insurance salesman back in the 80s, and he told you put $100 a month in this for the next 40 years, and when you retire at age 70 years old, you'll have $1 billion in it, something like that. Well, it was based upon the fact that in the 80s, interest rates were 18 to 20%, and they projected the values at those 18 to 20% growth. Well, interest rates aren't 18 to 20% anymore. As a matter of fact, universal life policies haven't paid 18 to 20% for probably 20 years. And so the fact is that a universal life is a life insurance policy based on fluctuating interest rates. A whole life policy is a policy also based on interest rates, but it's a little bit different. You get a flat interest rate no matter what. And if the company's profitable, they'll share some of the dividends with you. So it gives you a little bit better rate of return over time. And then an index universal life, the way that works is it says if the stock market goes up, you make money, but if the stock market goes down, you don't lose any money. So given the fact that the stock market outperforms interest markets about 80% of the time, you probably have a better chance of making money in an index universal life than you do in a universal life. If you just want straight like a souped up bank account, obviously not FDIC insured, but if you just want a souped up bank account, the whole life policy is the way to go. Now, here's the deal with these things. They have what is called cash value, and life insurance is designed in such a way that you can take the cash value out tax-free. So as you're contemplating paying for long-term care, as you're contemplating how to create my income strategies, and as we get into these tax things that we're going to talk about next, as you're contemplating the tax side of things, this can be a tax-free bucket if it's structured correctly. Now, I will tell you that more often than not, when we see people with life insurance, they haven't designed it properly. And I say that because most of us, when we buy life insurance, we buy it on ourselves. And for me to buy, I'm 58 years old, for me to buy a life insurance policy on me, it can be very expensive. However, on my 25-year-old son, for me to buy a life insurance policy on him, well, that's dirt cheap. And if I buy a life insurance policy on him, I can actually be the owner. And as long as I'm the owner, I control the cash that's inside of it. So think about that for a minute. I can be the owner. I have a policy with cash in it, growing based on the cost of life insurance for my young son, putting tons of cash in it that I get to use tax-free for me. And then when I pass away, if I don't need it, it goes tax-free to whomever is my beneficiaries was going to inherit the money anyways, but it's all tax-free, and that's the most important thing. Obviously, you need to make sure that we're not paying too much in taxes. Like I said from the very get-go, we're a big believer in tax planning. If you want us to sit down and show you how to do tax planning, and to me, this is really the most important aspect, of claiming your Social Security. We talked about this a little bit before. Imagine if you thought you and your spouse were going to be collecting $60,000 a year in Social Security, and all of a sudden recognizing that because of the way your assets are structured and the way your income's coming in, your Social Security, 85% of it's subject to tax. And you're in the 32% tax bracket because you have this large IRA and you're being forced to take money out even if you don't need it. That's because you don't have a proper tax plan. Because I'm going to show you here before we're done how to have your Social Security, have that income stream, have $100,000 a year of income from Social Security and IRAs and all those other things that we get our money from, and pay zero taxes. I'm a big proponent on that. Again, if you schedule some time with Dawn, she will send you out our book on tax planning. It's I don't know, it's 130, 140 pages long, but it's got some very, very specific tax strategies that everyone can employ. We're not talking about rocket science stuff here. The difference in what we do is that we are planners, and we 100% think tax planning has to be part of any plan. Social Security has to be part of any plan. Most advisors just want to look at the investments and tell you what to do with them. And as a matter of fact, most of the time when you see investor statements from, I'm not picking on Merrill Lynch, but Merrill Lynch statement at the bottom says, don't talk to us about taxes. Morgan Stanley, don't talk to us about taxes. They don't want to take that onus. Well, we think taxes, you cannot retire properly if you're going to lose 20 to 30% off the top. If you're going to lose Social Security revenue to taxes, that's just in a crazy way. I never understood how somebody can give investment advice if they don't understand the tax implications of what they're doing. If you want us to show you the tax implications, if you just want the book so you can figure out how to do it yourself, you don't even have to call Dawn. Go to Amazon. It's called Death and Taxes. It's by me. You can look my name up and look at Death and Taxes. You can go to our website and see it there, and you can click there and it'll take you to Amazon. But you can go to Amazon yourself. So if you don't even want to talk to us and you're just trying to get the information, go to Amazon and buy the book. All the proceeds go to charity anyway, so we don't take any of the money from it. So there's no upside to me selling more books. It's just I want to make sure that information's out there for you. We will do tax planning if you come in, and we'll take care of it. This is what happens with your Social Security when it's taxed, right? So if you're a single person and you take all your provisional income plus 1/2 of Social Security, and I'll show this in a minute. If it's less than 25,000, Social Security is not taxable. If it's between 25 and 34, up to 50% is taxable. Over 34,000, 85%. And for married, filing joint, look at this. If you take all your other income plus 1/2 of Social Security, that number is more than 44,000. Up to 85% of your Social Security is taxable. And I got news for you. Living in the Baltimore, Washington area, it's not hard to get over $45,000 of income. That's not that big of a number for those that just live in the Baltimore, Washington area. The rule says you take your provisional income, which is all your ordinary income, all your dividends and capital gains, and all your non-interest accounts. So, for example, muni bonds, even though they're not taxable, they count towards is Social Security taxable. Your stocks and bonds, your mutual funds. And one of the things I said, I'm not a big fan of mutual funds. Think about this. If you have mutual funds in a brokerage account, remember back in 2008, the stock market dropped 40%. And in January of 2009, you got a tax bill and you had to report gains on your tax return, even though the stock market dropped. Well, here's what happened. Back in 1997, the manager of this fund bought Apple stock for $1 a share. And this isn't accurate numbers. He bought it for $1 a share. At the beginning of 2007, Apple stock was selling for $3,000 a share. Again, I'm making up the numbers. Well, when Apple stock went from $3,000 a share to $2,000 a share, that was a 30% drop in value in the fund. People panicked. They sold. They wanted their money. Well, he had to sell Apple shares at $2,000 a share. He had to sell at $2,000 a share. He bought it at $1,000. You who held that mutual fund pay tax on the difference. That's what happened. So you're paying tax on phantom income. You didn't actually make anything. You lose it. That's that dividend and capital gains that we're talking about there. Ordinary income. If you have wages, if you have bank interest, if you buy and sell things short term, you take all your income, pensions, you take all your income plus 1/2 of Social Security. And this is just what I talked about. All these income things, Social Security, wages, distributions from IRAs and 401ks and 403bs, interest, bond interest, muni bond interest, capital gain interest, pensions. If you have taxable inheritance, all that money counts towards the is Social Security taxable. If you take one half of your Social Security plus all the rest of your income, and it's more than 25,000 up to 34,000, that's the taxing brackets for Social Security, for single people, for married, filing joint, and this is how it actually works. $20,000 of Social Security income, $40,000 IRA withdrawal. You take one half of Social Security plus the 40,000, that equals 50,000. I think that's clear. 50,000 minus 32, that's 18,000. So that's the dollar amount that's subject, because remember, it's how much above that 32,000 threshold is going to be taxed. This is for a married filing joint couple. How much of that above 32,000 is going to be taxed? Well, 18,000 is going to be taxed. You take 18,000 times 0.5, that gives you 9,000. So the 9,000 is what actually is taxable. Of that 20,000, we know at least 9,000 is now taxable. You go back to the 50 that you started with, 44, that's that second threshold for married filing joint. 50 minus 44, 6,000 now is in that above that 50% category. 6,000 times 0.35, because remember, 50 to 85%, that's the 35, that's that 35% going between 50 and 85. So 0.35 times 6,000, 2,100. Of your Social Security, 55% is taxable, right? That's how that worked out. Imagine if you had $40,000 worth of Social Security and $20,000 worth of IRA money. One half of IRA money plus your Social Security, right? Excuse me, one half of Social Security plus your IRA money equals 40. Same calculations, same income. Only 10% of your Social Security is taxable instead of 40. That's why it's so important to have a tax strategy. Again, imagine if you had a choice on your tax return to report $11,000 being taxed or $4,000 being taxed. Clearly, you would rather pay tax on $4,000 than $11,000 if you can control that. And I'm telling you now, with a proper tax plan, you can control how much of your Social Security is taxable. How do you save money on your taxes? Obviously, you can postpone receiving your Social Security benefits by waiting later. You can figure out how to reduce wages distributions from 401ks and IRAs. I'm a big proponent on Roth conversions. Get rid of interest-free muni bonds, maybe high yields. But either way, this interest and dividends are going to kill your Social Security. All these things hurt you. So you need to figure out how to structure these in such a way that you're not paying tax on them, or they don't cause Social Security to be taxable. This is a doctor of mine. He's a whack job, but I love him to death. His Social Security is 40 grand. He's got $500 a year coming in from interest from his bank account. He has about $2,500 a year coming in dividends. He's got about $15,000 coming from his IRA. He's got about $10,000 worth of capital gains. We're taking about $7,000 a year out of his cash account. So $7,000 a year. The reason why it's $7,000 a year cash, this capital gains, we're producing cash every year for him, so he has cash in his account. We have money in a Roth IRA. And remember I said that cash value life insurance, if it's structured correctly, we're taking $10,000 out of his IRA. Out of his life insurance policy. He has over $100,000 a year, and his tax bill is zero. Absolutely zero. And again, I can't stress enough. You want to maximize your Social Security, get the most out of it. Even if you're taking it 62, why would you give up 30 to 40% of it to the tax bill? Between the state of Maryland being somewhere between 8 and 9% in taxes, depending on what tax income level you're in, and then the federal government right now, most of us are in the 22 to 24% tax bracket. And then by the time we get that back to 2026 and the tax rates go up, you're going to be in the 25 to 28% tax bracket for the exact same income. It makes no sense not to have a plan to attack the tax bill so that you can get the maximum value out of that Social Security. You paid into it. You need to get as much out of it as you possibly can. because you paid for it. It does not make sense to leave money on the table. And all that comes with having a calculation. You have to do the math. Here's what you need to do. You need to minimize losses in your investment accounts. You need to have a reasonable rate of return. You got to manage your taxation, multiple sources of reliable income, have a plan just in case the market turns against you, have a written plan. A written plan, I can't stress it enough. If you schedule that call, we'll have a conversation. We'll figure out what it is you need to do. We can do it online, just like we're doing now. And what we will do is we will show you how to create the income streams that you want. We'll show you how to maximize that Social Security so you're putting as much of it into your pocket as you can, and you're not leaving any Social Security on the table. You're not leaving any money behind to the extent we can calculate that for you. We're going to show you how to make sure you're paying the least amount of taxes. If I can get you tax-free, that's the ultimate goal. We're going to show you how to convert into Roth IRAs and how to use cash value life insurance for you. And if it's important to you, and not everybody wants to do this, but at the end of the day, if you're going to have money left over, when you pass away, there's going to be money left over in your estate. If you're going to have assets left that are going to go someplace, you're going to let us know, yes, I'm willing to lose 40 to 50% of it to taxes. I don't care if they have to pay tax on it, or if you think those people who are going to inherit it are those organizations that you're going to leave it to. If it's more important to leave them the money than the IRS and the federal government your money, we will show you how to maximize that value too. So I'm wrapping up here right now. And all I can say is, please click the button, take 15 minutes to come in and have a conversation with us. Tell us what we can do to help. If it's just giving you answers, we'll do that. You do not have to come into my office. You do not have to have an appointment. What we want to do is make sure that we're giving you the most useful information. We'll help you with it. You can do it yourself, but we want to make sure we're giving you complete information. And like I said at the beginning, we got a lot of information. We've been on this for about an hour and 10 minutes, a lot of information, but there's a lot more that goes with each piece of that puzzle that I described to you tonight. Click the button, schedule 15 minutes, tell us what you need. We can send it to you. We can answer your questions. You can have us help you. It's all your choice. You just got to start by giving us, clicking that button or giving us a call. I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you very much.